I'm 28F, and I've been financially independent since I was 22. I work in tech, make good money, and moved across the country 5 years ago to get away from my toxic family. My parents, 65M and 62F, are the type of people who think family means you owe them everything, no matter how they treat you. My sister, Emma, 25F, is their golden child who has never worked a day in her life and still lives at home. Emma is the kind of person who thinks the world revolves around her. She's never had consequences for anything because my parents always bail her out. She's crashed 3 cars, all paid for by parents, dropped out of college twice, tuition paid by parents, and has never held a job for more than 2 weeks. She's also incredibly entitled and has this weird obsession with my life. She constantly asks about my apartment, my job, my boyfriend, like she's taking notes. I moved to Seattle specifically to get away from them. I have a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment in a trendy neighborhood that I absolutely love. It's my sanctuary. I pay $2,800 a month for it, which is steep, but worth every penny for my peace of mind. I've made it clear to my family that they are not welcome to visit without explicit invitation, and I've only given them my address for emergency purposes. About 8 months ago, Emma started talking about wanting to experience city life and how unfair it was that I got to live somewhere cool while she was stuck in our boring hometown. My parents started dropping hints about how I should help family and maybe let Emma stay with me for a few months to find herself. I shut that down immediately. I told them in no uncertain terms that Emma was not welcome in my apartment, not for a visit, not for a stay, not ever. I explained that I moved across the country specifically to get away from their dysfunction and I wasn't about to invite it back into my life. This caused a huge fight, with my parents calling me selfish and ungrateful, but I held firm. Then, about 4 months ago, my parents surprised me with a visit. They said they were in Seattle for a weekend getaway and wanted to see me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let them come over for dinner. It was actually a pleasant evening, which should have been my first red flag. My parents were being unusually nice and complimentary about my apartment. My dad kept commenting on the locks, the security, the building amenities. My mom was taking a lot of pictures, for memory's sake. When they left, I noticed my keys were slightly out of place on my kitchen counter. I thought I was being paranoid, but something felt off. I almost changed my locks that week, but then convinced myself I was overreacting. Last Tuesday, I was supposed to work late on a project presentation. I'd been at the office since 7 a.m. and planned to stay until at least 9 p.m. However, around 3 p.m., I started feeling really sick, turned out to be food poisoning from lunch. I decided to head home early to rest. I got to my apartment around 4:30 p.m. and immediately knew something was wrong. There were voices coming from inside, and I could smell cooking food. My first thought was that I was being robbed, so I quietly called 911 and waited in the hallway. Then I heard laughing. Familiar laughing. I used my key to open the door, and I cannot even begin to describe the rage that flooded through me when I saw the scene. Emma was sprawled on MY couch, wearing MY clothes, eating food from MY kitchen, watching MY Netflix on my TV. She had clearly been there for a while. There were dirty dishes everywhere, her stuff was scattered around my living room, and she had the audacity to look annoyed when I walked in. "Oh," she said, not even getting up. "You're home early. Mom said you usually work late." I was so shocked I couldn't even speak at first. Then I noticed more of her belongings. Suitcases in my bedroom. Her toiletries in my bathroom. She had moved in. "What the hell are you doing in my apartment?" I finally managed to ask. Emma rolled her eyes like I was being unreasonable. "Mom and Dad said I could stay here for a few months while I figure out my next steps. They have keys, so obviously it's fine." "They have what?" She looked confused by my reaction. "Keys? Dad made copies when they visited. They said you'd agreed to let me stay but were too proud to ask directly, so they wanted to surprise you." I immediately called my parents. The conversation went exactly as you'd expect. "Mom, sweetie, we know you said no, but Emma really needs this opportunity, and you have such a big apartment." "Me, it's a 1-bedroom. Dad, you can share. Family helps family." "Me, you broke into my apartment and moved someone in without my permission. This is illegal." "Mom, we didn't break in, we used keys. And Emma is family, not someone." "Me, get her out. Now." "Dad, she's already settled in. She quit her job." "Me, what job? She's never had a job for more than 2 weeks." "Mom, the one at the boutique. She's been there for 3 months." This was news to me, but also irrelevant. "Me, I don't care if she quit being CEO of Google. She's not staying here." Emma, who had been listening on speaker, chimed in, "Come on, sis. It'll be fun. Like a sleepover." I hung up and told Emma she had 1 hour to pack her stuff and leave. She laughed. I'm not going anywhere. Mom and Dad said I could stay, and they're helping pay your rent anyway. Record scratch. Freeze frame. They're what? Turns out, my parents had been telling Emma that they were subsidizing my rent. They weren't, and that since they were helping me financially, they had a say in who could stay in their apartment. Emma genuinely believed this. She also believed that I was just being dramatic and would come around once I realized how fun it would be to have her there. I gave Emma until the next morning to leave voluntarily. When I woke up, not only was she still there, but she had ordered herself breakfast delivery using my DoorDash account and was planning her day around, exploring the neighborhood. That's when I decided to go nuclear. First, I called a locksmith and had all my locks changed immediately. Emma was out, exploring at the time, so when she came back, she couldn't get in. I watched from my window as she called our parents in tears. Second, I called the police and filed a report for breaking and entering, theft. She had eaten my food and used my utilities, and trespassing. I had documentation that I had never given permission for Emma to be there, and I had the receipts for the locksmith as proof that I had to change my locks due to unauthorized key copying. Third, I called my landlord and explained the situation. I wanted to make sure there were no issues with my lease due to unauthorized occupants. My landlord was actually really cool about it and offered to ban Emma from the building entirely. But I wasn't done. See, I had realized something important during this whole ordeal. My parents had been lying to Emma about paying my rent, but they had also been lying to me about their financial situation. They were always claiming to be broke whenever I didn't visit for holidays or send gifts, but somehow they could afford to fly to Seattle, stay in hotels, and support Emma's lifestyle? So I did some digging. I called my aunt, my mom's sister, and asked some casual questions about my parents' finances. Turns out, my dad had inherited a significant amount of money from his father 2 years ago, something they never told me. They weren't broke at all. They were actually quite comfortable, but they had been using their supposed financial struggles as emotional manipulation to make me feel guilty. Armed with this information, I crafted my revenge. I created a group chat with my parents, Emma, and several other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins. I then sent a detailed message explaining exactly what had happened. Hi everyone. I wanted to let you all know about an exciting development in my life. Mom and Dad were so eager for Emma to experience city living that they secretly copied my apartment keys during their visit and moved her into my one-bedroom apartment while I was at work, all without asking me. They told Emma that they pay my rent. They don't. I pay $2,800 per month myself, and that this gave them the right to decide who lives in my apartment. Emma spent several days eating my food, sleeping in my bed, using my belongings, and making herself at home in my space. When I came home sick from work and found her there, she was genuinely surprised that I wasn't thrilled about this surprise roommate situation. She even quit her job because Mom and Dad told her she could stay indefinitely. I've since changed my locks, filed a police report for breaking and entering, and Emma is now banned from my building. But I wanted to share this story with all of you because I think it really demonstrates the kind of boundary-respecting, considerate people our parents are. I'm sure you'll all keep this in mind for your own interactions with them going forward. After all, if they're willing to break into my apartment and lie to both Emma and me to manipulate the situation, what might they be willing to do in your lives? Also, in case anyone was wondering about their financial situation, since they're always claiming to be broke, Aunt Sarah mentioned that Dad's inheritance from Grandpa was quite substantial, so don't feel too bad about not being able to help them out financially. Hope everyone is doing well. The response was immediate and beautiful. My phone started ringing within minutes. Family members were pissed. Apparently, my parents had been pulling similar manipulative crap with other people, but everyone thought they were the only ones experiencing it. My uncle was furious because my parents had borrowed $5,000 from him 6 months ago for emergency medical bills that apparently didn't exist. My cousin was angry because my parents had guilted her into driving 8 hours to help them move furniture, claiming they couldn't afford movers, right around the time they were apparently flush with inheritance money. My aunt was livid because my parents had declined to contribute to my grandmother's birthday party, saying they were financially struggling, but had apparently spent hundreds of dollars on Emma's city adventure. Within 24 hours, my parents were getting angry calls and messages from multiple family members. The family group chat became a battlefield, with people sharing their own stories of my parents' manipulative behavior. But wait, there's more. Emma's reality check. Remember how Emma quit her job because my parents told her she could stay with me indefinitely? Well, now she was stranded in Seattle with no job, no place to stay. I wasn't letting her back in, obviously, and no money. She called me crying, begging me to let her stay, just for a few more days, while she figured things out. I told her she could figure it out from our hometown and offered to pay for a bus ticket home. I'm not completely heartless. But here's where it gets interesting. Emma didn't want to go home because she had been bragging to all her friends about her cool city life and how she was finally independent. She had been posting Instagram stories from my apartment, pretending it was her place, and telling everyone she was starting fresh in Seattle. She was too embarrassed to go back home immediately, so she decided to stay in Seattle and prove she could make it on her own. She found a hostel for a few nights, then tried to get her old job back at the boutique. They told her they had already replaced her. She spent 2 weeks burning through what little money she had, staying in increasingly sketchy places, before finally admitting defeat and calling our parents to come get her. My parents were in full damage control mode. They were getting cold-shouldered by family members, Emma was stranded and demanding they fix the situation, and they were realizing that their manipulative tactics had finally backfired spectacularly. They tried every approach with me. Apologizing and claiming they meant well, I didn't respond. Getting angry and saying I was tearing the family apart, I responded with screenshots of their lies. Trying to guilt me about Emma being homeless, I pointed out that they had a house she could live in. Attempting to get other family members to pressure me, backfired when those family members sided with me. Threatening to cut me off financially, I reminded them they don't support me financially and never have. Nothing worked. The final blow. After Emma finally went back home, my parents made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. They decided to drive to Seattle to talk things out in person and make things right. They showed up at my building and demanded the front desk call me. I told the desk staff that these people were not welcome and to call security if they didn't leave. My parents caused such a scene that the building manager had to get involved. Here's the beautiful part, my building has security cameras everywhere. The manager reviewed the footage of my parents screaming at the front desk staff, demanding to be led up to my apartment, and making threats about how they had every right to be there, because they were family. The building manager was so appalled by their behavior that he officially banned them from the property and said that if they ever came back, he would call the police for trespassing. But the story gets better. During their tantrum at my building, my dad apparently had what he called a medical episode. I suspect it was a panic attack brought on by the stress of his manipulation tactics failing so spectacularly. The front desk staff called an ambulance, and my parents ended up at the emergency room. The hospital bills from that incident? Not covered by their insurance for some reason. Cost them about $3,000. It's been 6 months since this all went down, and the consequences are still rippling through my family. My parents are basically persona non grata at family gatherings. Nobody trusts them anymore, and several family members have demanded repayment for money my parents borrowed under false pretenses. Emma is back at home, unemployed again, and her social media presence has shifted from independent city girl to struggling with mental health, which, to be fair, she probably is after such a public failure. My parents have attempted to reach out to me a few times through intermediaries, but I've made it clear that any relationship with them would require a genuine apology, not a sorry you feel that way non-apology. Repayment of all the money I spent on locks, security, and other expenses related to their stunt. Acknowledgement that what they did was wrong, not just well-intentioned. A commitment to never contact me without permission again. So far, they haven't been willing to meet these terms. The unexpected benefits. Honestly? This whole situation has been the best thing that ever happened to my family relationships, just not in the way my parents intended. I've gotten much closer to my extended family. My aunts, uncles, and cousins have all reached out to share their own stories about my parents' manipulative behavior, and we've formed a support network of sorts. My cousin actually moved to Seattle for work and we hang out regularly now. My aunt visits twice a year. I have the family relationships I always wanted, just not with my parents. I also finally went to therapy to deal with all the gaslighting and manipulation I grew up with. It's been incredibly helpful, and I've learned to set boundaries in other areas of my life too. Emma's update. Last month, I heard through the family grapevine that Emma is engaged to some guy she met online. She's apparently planning a wedding and expecting everyone to contribute financially because she deserves a dream wedding after everything she's been through. The everything she's been through apparently refers to the traumatic experience of facing consequences for her actions for the first time in her life. She sent me a wedding invitation to my parents' house, not my actual address, which she doesn't have anymore. The invitation included a note asking me to be a bridesmaid and saying that she forgives me for overreacting and wants to put this whole silly misunderstanding behind us. I didn't respond, but I heard from my cousin that Emma is telling people I'm being dramatic and that the whole apartment thing was just a miscommunication. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from an unknown number. It was my dad, calling from Emma's phone because I had blocked their numbers. Dad, your sister's wedding is next month. Me, congratulations to her. Dad, she wants you to be there. Me, I'm sure she does. Dad, can't you put aside this petty grudge for one day? It's her special day. Me, there's no grudge, Dad. There are consequences. Dad, what we did wasn't that bad. We were trying to help both of you. Me, by breaking into my apartment and lying to everyone involved? Dad, we didn't break in. We used keys. Me, keys you copied without my permission, which is literally the definition of breaking in. The conversation continued like this for about 10 minutes, with my dad trying every manipulation tactic in the book. He tried guilt, Emma has been crying every day, fear, what if something happens and you regret not being there, obligation, she's your only sister, and even bribery, we'll pay for your flight and hotel. I finally ended the conversation by saying, Dad, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I will not be attending Emma's wedding. I will not be contributing money. I will not be participating in this family's drama anymore. The fact that you're calling me from someone else's phone because I blocked you should tell you everything you need to know about our relationship. The recent development. Last week, I got a message from Emma herself on Instagram. She had apparently created a new account to get around the fact that I had blocked her main account. The message was a long, rambling paragraph about how she's grown as a person and learned from her mistakes and how she just wants her family back together. She said that she's been in therapy, doubtful, and has realized that she handled the situation poorly. She ended the message by saying that she's willing to forgive and forget if I'm willing to do the same, and that she really wants me at her wedding because it won't feel complete without me there. The level of delusion is astounding. She still doesn't understand what she did wrong, and she still thinks this is something she needs to forgive me for. I didn't respond to the message, but I did screenshot it and send it to my cousin with the caption, "The audacity is unmatched." The family group chat, which I left months ago, but my cousin keeps me updated, has apparently become Emma's personal drama broadcast channel. She's been posting regular updates about her wedding planning, financial stress, and how hurt she is that I won't be there. According to my cousin, the family is split between people who think I'm being too harsh and people who think Emma still doesn't get it. The older generation, my parents' siblings, tends to lean toward family should forgive family, while the younger generation, my cousins, are firmly team me. My uncle apparently posted a long message in the group chat about how actions have consequences and how Emma can't expect forgiveness without accountability. This led to a huge argument between him and my parents, which resulted in my parents leaving the group chat entirely. Emma is now the only one regularly posting in what used to be the family group chat, essentially talking to herself about her wedding plans and financial woes. I mentioned that I started therapy after all this happened, and it's been incredibly eye-opening. My therapist has helped me realize that the apartment incident wasn't an isolated event, it was the culmination of years of boundary violations and manipulative behavior. She asked me to make a list of all the times my parents had violated my boundaries or made decisions about my life without consulting me. The list was 3 pages long. Some highlights. Giving my phone number to guys they thought I should date. Showing up unannounced at my college apartment multiple times. Opening my mail when I still lived at home, even after I asked them not to. Making financial decisions, for me, like co-signing loans I didn't want. Sharing personal information about me with relatives without permission. Trying to control my career choices through guilt and manipulation. Using emotional blackmail whenever I tried to establish independence. The apartment key copying was just the most extreme example of a pattern that had been going on my entire adult life. The money trail. Remember how I mentioned my parents had been claiming financial hardship while apparently having inheritance money? Well, my therapy homework included doing some research into their actual financial situation. I discovered that not only did my dad inherit money from his father, but my parents also received a significant insurance payout when my grandmother's house was damaged in a storm 2 years ago. They had been sitting on at least $150,000 while crying poor to everyone in the family. The really infuriating part? They had asked me for money multiple times over the years for various emergencies, and I had actually sent them money on 3 occasions, totaling about $2,000. Money I couldn't really afford to give, but I did it because I thought they were struggling. Meanwhile, they were funding Emma's lifestyle and planning elaborate schemes to manipulate me into housing her. On my therapist's advice, I decided to consult with a lawyer about the whole situation. I wanted to know if I had any legal recourse for what my parents had done. The lawyer was fascinated by the case. Apparently, what my parents did could be considered several different crimes: breaking and entering, theft of services, utilities, harassment, and potentially even identity theft, since they had used my address for Emma's mail forwarding. The lawyer said I had a solid case if I wanted to pursue criminal charges or a civil lawsuit. However, she also warned me that going down that road would definitely burn any bridges with my family permanently. I decided not to pursue legal action, but it was validating to know that what my parents did was genuinely illegal, not just inappropriate, as they kept claiming. Emma's meltdown. 3 days ago, I got a call from my cousin with an update that was both hilarious and sad. Apparently, Emma had another meltdown about the wedding costs and called off the engagement entirely. She told her fiancé that she couldn't marry him because her family doesn't support her and she can't start a marriage with so much family drama. Her fiancé, understandably confused, tried to suggest they could just have a smaller, cheaper wedding. Emma apparently screamed at him that he doesn't understand what she's going through and that if he really loved her, he would find a way to pay for the wedding she deserves. The poor guy broke up with her on the spot. Emma is now posting on social media about how toxic people have ruined her life and how she's cutting off anyone who doesn't support her dreams. She's apparently planning to move to Los Angeles to start fresh and become an influencer. My parents are reportedly freaking out because they were counting on Emma getting married and becoming someone else's financial responsibility. Looking back on all of this, I realized that my parents' scheme was never really about helping Emma. It was about maintaining control over both of us. They couldn't stand that I had successfully established independence and created a life they couldn't manipulate. By forcing Emma into my space, they were trying to reassert control over my living situation. Force me back into the role of caretaker for Emma. Create a situation where I would need their help to resolve the conflict. Demonstrate that my boundaries were meaningless. When their plan backfired, they lost control of the entire family dynamic. Other relatives started questioning their behavior, Emma's dependence became more obvious and problematic, and I became completely untouchable. They essentially destroyed their own manipulation network by overplaying their hand. Today marks exactly 6 months since I came home to find Emma in my apartment. Here's where everyone stands. Me, thriving. I got a promotion at work, I'm in therapy, I have great relationships with my extended family, and my apartment is still my sanctuary. I sleep peacefully knowing that my boundaries are secure. Emma, single, unemployed, living at home, and apparently planning to move to LA with no money, no job prospects, and no realistic plan. She's still posting on social media about her journey and how she's not letting toxic people hold her back. My parents, financially supporting a 25-year-old who has no intention of becoming independent, estranged from most of their family, and still refusing to acknowledge that they did anything wrong. They've apparently started going to a new church because people at their old church were asking too many questions about the family drama. Extended family, much closer with each other, more aware of manipulation tactics, and generally more supportive of healthy boundaries. Several of my cousins have started therapy themselves after our conversations about family dysfunction. The final thoughts. People keep asking me if I regret how I handled the situation, or if I feel bad about the consequences for Emma and my parents. The answer is no. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I have agency in my family relationships. I'm not being guilt, manipulated, or controlled. I'm not responsible for managing other people's emotions or fixing other people's problems. Emma is facing the natural consequences of her choices. She chose to participate in violating my boundaries. She chose to quit her job based on her parents' lies. She chose to believe she was entitled to my space and resources. These were her decisions, and the outcomes belong to her. My parents are facing the natural consequences of their manipulation and dishonesty. They chose to copy my keys without permission. They chose to lie to Emma and to me. They chose to violate my boundaries in the most extreme way possible. The loss of family relationships and trust is the natural result of those choices. I didn't tear the family apart. I simply stopped enabling dysfunction, and the dysfunction collapsed under its own weight. The lesson. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this story, it's this: boundary violations escalate. They don't stop on their own, and they don't get better with time. The only way to stop them is to enforce consequences, no matter how uncomfortable or dramatic it feels. My parents violated my boundaries for years in small ways, and I tolerated it because it seemed easier than confronting them. But tolerance didn't make the behavior stop, it just taught them that they could get away with bigger and bigger violations. The apartment key incident was just the inevitable escalation of a pattern I had been enabling for years. If I had enforced consequences earlier, maybe it never would have gotten to that point. Or maybe it would have, but at least I would have been better prepared for it. Either way, I'm glad I finally drew the line. I just wish I had drawn it years ago. I know some people will read this story and think I'm being too harsh, or that I should give my family another chance, or that I'm punishing Emma and my parents too severely. To those people, I want to say this: I spent 28 years trying to manage my family's dysfunction. I spent 28 years making excuses for manipulative behavior. I spent 28 years prioritizing their comfort over my own boundaries. I'm done. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply refusing to participate in dysfunction anymore. I'm not keeping my family apart, I'm allowing the natural consequences of their choices to play out without interference from me. Emma and my parents are welcome to have a relationship with me anytime they want. The terms are simple: treat me with respect, acknowledge wrongdoing, and demonstrate changed behavior over time. Until then, I'll be over here living my best life, surrounded by people who respect my boundaries and support my well-being. And honestly, it's the happiest I've ever been. Update, added today. I was going to end the story there, but something happened yesterday that was too perfect not to share. I got a text from an unknown number that said, "This is Emma. I'm moving to LA next week and I wanted to give you one last chance to apologize and be part of my journey. After this, I'm blocking you forever." I replied, "Have a great trip. Don't forget sunscreen." She responded, "That's it? That's all you have to say to me?" Me, safe travels, Emma. Emma, you're going to regret this when I'm famous and you realize what you lost. Me, I'm sure I will. Good luck with everything. Emma, I can't believe you're choosing to end our relationship over something so stupid. And that right there is the entire problem in one sentence. After everything that happened, she still thinks this is about something stupid and that I'm the one choosing to end our relationship. The complete lack of self-awareness is actually impressive. I didn't respond to her last message. 24 hours later, she sent another text: "Fine. I'm blocking you now. Don't try to contact me when you change your mind." I haven't tried to contact her, obviously. But it's been radio silence since then, which honestly feels like the perfect ending to this whole saga. Emma is off to chase her dreams in LA, my parents are dealing with the consequences of their choices, and I'm here in my beautiful apartment that no one can enter without my permission. Sometimes the good guys really do win.